Welcome to the AgEmerge podcast, brought to you by Ag Solutions Network. Your farming challenges are unique, so your practices should be too. We're here to share emerging ideas, build connections, and provoke conversation.
Get ready to improve your soil, your crops, your livestock, and your family's livelihood. I'm your producer, Kim Chase.
And I'm your host, Monty Bottens. Thanks for joining us.
We're so glad you're listening. We've got Jeff Moyer, CEO at Rodale Institute, joining us on the podcast, and there's a little something for everyone today. You know, one of the really cool things about being able to sit down and visit with our guests is how we get to dig into the story behind the stories and learn where great ideas come from, and some of them just might surprise you. As many of you know, Jeff is a world-renowned authority in organic agriculture. His expertise includes organic crop production systems with a focus on weed management, cover crops, crop rotations, equipment modification use, and facilities design. But Jeff is also probably best known for conceptualizing and popularizing the no-till roller crimper. And on this podcast, we get to hear the backstory. And trust me, it's a fun one. And that's just a small sample of what we discussed today. So let's jump right in.
Well, Jeff, I welcome you to the AgEmerge podcast today. I appreciate you taking the time to share with us a little bit about yourself and Rodale Institute and all the wonderful things you've got going on there. And what we like to do with our guests is just ask you to start out. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, your mission, your why, and bring everybody up to speed.
Well, sure, I can try to do that. I don't know how exciting my history or my path is to your listeners, but it is my path. Getting out of I'm going to go all the way back to high school. You know, when I got out of high school, my interest was really in not in agriculture. I grew up on a small farm and pretty much hated the work, and it seemed like endless work. And our small farm had a very nice woodlot. I tended to spend much more time in the forest, and so when I got out of school, I went to forestry school and wanted to work in the forestry field. When I got out of college, my girlfriend at the time was in Pennsylvania. The only work I could find in forestry was in Colorado. And she said, well, enjoy your life in the West. And I didn't really want to give up on her. And I think it all worked out well because we've been married for like 43 years now. So that kind of worked out all right. But in so doing, I shifted gears and I ended up getting a job at this place called Rodale Institute. And, it's just been one wild ride after another and been here ever since. In the process, my wife and I bought a small piece of land. This was the mid-1970s. And part of the back to the land movement as the counterculture left urban areas. You may recall they call the hippie counterculture of the 60s and early 70s was sort of leaving urban areas, getting pushed out, and everybody was going to the farm. And so we bought a piece of land and we still live there, build our own house. You know, it was the 70s, and it's worked out well. So we have an organic farm at home. My son actually has grown that farm tremendously and runs that now as a certified organic dairy operation. And that's his full-time career. And him and his family live and work there. The farm I live on, we still have the heifers live on our farm and the milk cows live on his farm. And it's just been a great life and been a fantastic opportunity to be involved in organic agriculture.
So you wanted to run as far away from farming as you could to the forest, and they just keep pulling you back. You see how this works?
Yeah. I tell everybody, and I saw the same thing with my children. I don't know if you have or your listeners have, but my son, when he graduated from school, said, I'm never leaving Berks County, Pennsylvania. I love it here. He went to school in Laramie, Wyoming, at the University of Wyoming. My daughter said, I can't wait to get out of here. She went less than an hour away. And so you just never know. Whatever it is you say you hate, that's what you will do.
Be careful what you say.
That's right. And everybody thinks hate and love are opposite ends of the spectrum, and they're really close together in the middle. And my hatred of farm work turned into love very quickly.
Well, good. We're glad that you did that U-turn, and thankful for your wife and making you come back to Pennsylvania. So that worked out great, or your future wife at that time.
It did work great.
So Rodale Institute got started there, and with your own farm too at the same time. Tell us a little bit about your journey with Rodale and some of the things over your tenure there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I started out in our farm operations team and became farm manager, and then farm director, then executive director, now CEO. So it's been a great opportunity to participate in the organic community, in the regenerative organic community, and watch that community grow and mature. Been able to be involved at a lot of different levels on a lot of different boards, served on the National Organic Standards Board in Washington, D.C., was able to help create some other nonprofits along the way. There's a small nonprofit located in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, that my wife and I helped start, called the Seed Farm. I was a founding board member for Pennsylvania Certified Organic, which is a nonprofit certifying agency. And then just in the last 5 years, helped to start the Organic Farmers Association, which the Institute has spun off in January of this year, and is now a separate nonprofit. So been involved in the nonprofit world my entire career, and always centered around the idea of agriculture and regenerative agriculture. Oh, I was a co-founder along with Patagonia and Bronner's of the Regenerative Organic Alliance, which is the nonprofit that holds the regenerative organic certification, which I helped build. So had the opportunity to build a lot of wonderful and amazing tools, and also did my own work in organic no-till, working on research here at the Institute, because we are a research and education facility. And we do have a farm. We're much bigger. The Institute is much larger than the farm, but we have this farm. We actually have 7 locations around the country now that we do our research and education on. So we have facilities in Georgia. We have a facility in California, one in Iowa, and we're doing some work on several locations here in the state of Pennsylvania.
And don't forget, for our farmer listeners out there who are in love with iron, we're talking to the father of the roller crimper, her grandfather or inventor of the roller crimper. So,
well, yeah, I guess all of the father and grandfather, and there's so many people have taken it, the idea and the concept, and carried it farther, faster, and that's really what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure of mine to be able to work on that technology. And that's a story. That's a story in and of itself.
Yeah, and it's fun to see getting adopted as 60-foot bars on a regular basis. A couple new manufacturers this year, and so it's fascinating to see that taking off and starting to scale.
Yeah, and not just in this country, but around the world. There's really been global adoption of that, and I would say there's probably as many conventional farms using the technology as organic farms now. It's really crossover technology that's facilitated farmers who adopt it to reduce their pesticide expenses, their herbicides costs. So that's great.
Yeah, because even in a conventional farm setting, you're greatly reducing the total amount of herbicides that are put out there, because we're using I like to say on our farm, we use cover crops. I plant the weeds I want. Otherwise, nature sends me the weeds I don't want. So it's easier to control the weeds that I want. So we do that and roller crimp, and it dramatically reduces. It probably takes our conventional chemistry application to a third.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, I believe that's what I've been hearing. I'm not a conventional farmer, but that's what I've been hearing from my conventional friends, that they were able to reduce their herbicide costs at least in half, sometimes, like you said, a third. And hey, that's money in their pocket.
Yeah. And it's less impact on the soil and the soil system. And if we can get, getting that adopted on 150 million acres in the next 5 years is not out of the question. I mean, it's ready to go.
It is. It's ready to go. Technology works hand in glove with cover crops, and really all we're doing is a lot of farmers are planting cover crops already. We're just allowing them to grow to maturity instead of terminating them early with an herbicide, and then use the roller crimper, which is a tool that there is a one-time cost for it, but I always say it's simple technology would have to be if I had a hand in creating it. There's no engine, there's no hydraulics, there's only a few moving parts. It almost never wears out.
Just add water.
If you happen to fill it with water and don't drain it in the winter, and you live in a northern climate, you can break it.
Yeah,
but that's about the only way. Yeah.
So tell us, how did you inspiration for it? How did it come about years ago when you were building that? I'm sure there was one of those points of frustration, like, gosh, this could be better.
Well, there was a whole bunch of things that came into it. I was giving a lecture at the University of Maryland. I remember it well. And there was a few farmers that were sitting in the room, and they were large-scale producers. And they were very polite and listened to my presentation. And then they sort of leaned back, sitting up against the wall in the back of the room. And one person put up his hand and waved his hand. I called on him for his question. He said, the problem we have is, he said, the four of us sitting here, I forget how many thousands of acres, he said they managed. And he said, and everything you're talking about transitioning to organic involves tillage. We don't have enough hours in the day to till all this land. There's no way we could do it. So apparently we can't be organic. And it really struck a chord with me that they made sense. And we had to have a way of reducing tillage. And then I was talking with another friend at the University of Connecticut, and he said, you guys in regenerative organic world constantly talk about soil health, and then you plow it. What part of plowing improves soil health? And so all these things were gelling in my mind. And yes, we do understand that in an alternative system like organic or regenerative organic, and where we're not using herbicides, we have to do something to manage weeds. And that does generally involve some tillage. We really believe that we're putting enough money in the savings account that we can take a little bit out of checking by doing some tillage. We don't like to do that, but how do we do?
And you're talking about the carbon or the soil health savings account.
Yeah, that's right. In the soil saving account, we're putting a lot into that bank account, and when we till the soil, we're taking some out. But if I put $100 in and take 10 out, I'll do that all day, every day, with money or with carbon. What we don't want to do is, put in almost nothing and take out 100. I mean, you can only do that for so long. And unfortunately, that's what we've done across the country and around the globe for far too long, and degraded our soils. So I was looking at those.
That's how that works, Jeff. They can just take out and print stuff, but we can't do that as farmers. It's funny.
We can't do that as farmers. We can't do that as private individuals. It doesn't work that way. So these ideas were rattling around in my head. At the same time, I was doing some work with one of our research scientists here as part of our management of our farm. And I remember the field. I remember the research plots. It was all tilled, and there was cover crops there, and there was probably 100 different research plots in this observational trial that this scientist was put in place. And in the process of doing the tillage and getting these crops established, that we were planting corn in the field, I left the ends of the field, happened to be in hairy vetch as one of the cover crops. I just planted the ends of the fields. I left those ends untilled. And in planting research plots, anybody that's ever done any research works knows there's a lot of alleyways, roadways, and you're driving on the ends all the time. And so I drove all over the ends of the field, and it was easier just to drag the planter through the plots and then pick it up. And so I planted the ends of the field. It was just easier. One of my neighbors stopped by, and he came into my office, and he said, "You guys, you claim to be organic, and then you spray herbicides." I said, "Kyle, we don't spray herbicides. What are you talking about?" He said, "You come up to this field and you tell me that you didn't spray herbicide on that." Went up to the field, and here, I couldn't tell you what happened in the 100 research plots because I don't know what happened there. But the ends of the field was this mat of dead mulch where we had driven all over this hairy vetch, with these beautiful little corn plants coming out through the slot that the planter made. And it wasn't even a no-till planter. It was just a planter, but it cut through the vetch just enough that it got seeds in the ground, We both stood and looked at it, and I said, I didn't spray herbicide there. And he said, that is amazing. And so I spent the next 5 or 6 years trying to duplicate my mistake and make it so I could replicate it. Mm-hmm. And played around with that for a bunch of times until it dawned on me that, you can't really tell farmers to just drive all over their fields because their neighbors will think they're drunk or an idiot or something, just driving a tractor around the field, pulling nothing. And so I had to invent something to pull. And I tried in that 5 or 6 year period, I tried using some off the shelf tools that already existed, everything from mowers to cultipackers and roller wheels, and nothing seemed to work. It's a little bit like those Swiss Army tools that you might get from somebody at Christmas. We all throw them in our toolbox or the glove compartment of the car. They say it's one tool does everything, and it's really one tool does nothing. In an emergency, it's better than nothing, but usually not much. Usually pinch your finger or cut yourself with it trying to use it. So we were using the wrong tools for the job, and none of it was working. I said, we have to invent a tool that's going to do what it is we want it to do. And my thought was, I want to put the tool on the front of the tractor. So, when you're making hay, you don't drive over the hay and then pull the hay behind you. You set it off to the side, or if it's self-propelled, you don't drive on it first. Your head's in the front. And so I wanted the first thing to be able to touch the cover crop to be a tool, whatever that was going to be. And we came up with a roller crimper, and the rest is sort of history. I worked with my neighbor who is a good welder, John Brubaker, a Mennonite farmer nearby, who had a much better weld shop than I did and was a great fabricator, likes and always enjoyed bending metal and shaping metal. And we literally, because they're Mennonites and they use bicycles for transportation, there was a bunch of bicycle wheels laying around. And so we just kept picking up bicycle wheels and holding them in the front of the tractor to try to figure out what looked to be about the right size. And, if it was too small, it looked like you were pushing a toy. If it was too big, it was like, well, then it looks like an old-fashioned steamroller. We don't want that. It's not construction equipment. We're not packing asphalt. So we came up with a tool that's around 24 inches in diameter. We went to, I think it was a 26-inch wheel, and said, well, that looks about right. Went to the salvage yard. We found some 16-inch well casing. Seemed to be about sturdy enough to do what we wanted to do. So 16-inch cylinder is what most roller crimpers are, because that's what we found at the salvage yard. They had some pre-cut 4-inch strips there. We said, boy, that looks about the right size for a blade. We didn't want it too short. We didn't want it too long. 4 inches was there. And so we welded them on, and the rest, made sense to us.
Sounds like intense CAD software was deployed, and engineering and test labs, and I love it. That is an awesome story.
Well, we knew that if we stood there looking at it, I said, well, if we put the blades and we make we roll a cylinder and put the blades across there, it's going to bounce. Mm-hmm. Because you're going to have a blade on the ground, a blade in the air, and it's just going to bounce. I said, well, I don't want it to bounce. And so I happened to be watching my wife roll out some pastry. And if you look at a pasta cutter, it's a spiral. And that's so the rolling pin doesn't bounce across the cutting board. It just kind of rolls. And the strips come out in ribbons, but it cuts them like, on an angle. But when you pull them up, they look like noodles, like ribbons. And I'm like, that's what I want. But then in talking with my neighbor, I said, if we do that, if we take that roller and sort of like twist it, and then we make a spiral, we basically created a screw. It's a screw. And if you put it on the front of the tractor, we farm on hills here in Pennsylvania. Yeah. If you're screwing yourself uphill, it's okay. But if you're screwing yourself downhill, it's not going to be you're not going to hold it in place. So we were sitting there thinking about, well, how do we neutralize that screw impact? And I happened to be leaning on a New Holland haybine. And if an old pull type haybine that has the crushers, if you look at those crushers, they're chevron shaped. Mm-hmm. And so I was leaning on it, looking at him, just like I'm looking at you, and it was behind me. And he said, why don't you make them like that? I said, make them like what? He goes, like that. And he pointed at the rollers, and I looked at it and I go, hey, why reinvent the wheel? Let's just do that. And so if you look at the spiral on a roller crimper, the way we've designed it, it's the exact pattern of a New Holland hay-bine crimper. So it worked, and away we went.
Wow, what a story. So by accidentally driving over the underrows too much, you discovered something that if you wouldn't pay attention or be out in the field, you never would have noticed. And thankfully, neighbor pointed it out. Then we take bicycle tires to determine the size. We get some old steel casing, 60-inch, happened to be there with 4-inch strips, and look at a New Holland hay-bine or the wife's pasta cutter and the New Holland hay-bine so we don't sidetrack. And that invented the roller crimper. All of those mending of ideas.
Well,
what a story!
I'm pretty certain God had a hand in it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not that clever. So
yeah. I say the same thing. I'm not that good. You just happen to open your eyes and pay attention, and he'll show you what you need to see.
Well, and knowing that we wanted to, the other piece that fit into this puzzle was, as I was thinking about how do we reduce tillage, we played around with some ideas of mulching. Because if you talk to gardeners, whether you're a conventional or organic gardener, a lot of gardeners, I wouldn't say most, but I think most, but a lot anyway, use mulch, whether it's grass clippings, newspaper, cardboard, carpet squares, you lay it out there on the ground, it stops annual weeds from growing. So we've got these little pieces of biological knowledge that were floating around in my head at the same time, along with seeing what we did, in that accidental end of the field where we created that mulch in situ right in the field. And so we thought, well, if we can ask farmers to grow the mulch as a cover crop right in place, create enough biomass to suppress annual weeds, and then use modern no-till planter technology, a lot of people think that organic is anti-technology, and that's just not true. We're really early adopters of technology. We'll use satellite guidance systems. We'll use robotics. We'll use any of those tools that don't negatively impact our personal health or the health of the soil or the planet. So we do stay away from it. And I think that's something I think most farmers can understand. Most farmers don't spray Roundup with the goal of making people healthy. That's not why you do it. And so from the organic perspective, we say, well, if it doesn't make people healthy or it doesn't improve soil health, why would we use that tool? But cover crops and modern no-till planter technology just seem to go hand in glove. We just needed a little bit of steering there with the roller crimper to make it work.
Yeah.
We're taking a short break to share that the AgEmerge podcast is brought to you by the team at Ag Solutions Network. Rooted in innovation, ASN is committed to leaving the land better than we found it, not simply maintaining it. We're here to help you navigate the balancing act of productivity and building a legacy. From practices to products, ASN is more than a new jug. It's a new way of thinking. So don't be afraid to be different. Be afraid to be the same. Contact Ag Solutions Network today at asn.farm. And now, back to our show.
So, necessity is the mother of invention, and you've got that tool in the toolbox now, and now all of a sudden you've got that enabled to allow you to enable organic no-till. And really, like you're alluding to, in the last 5 years, the planter technology that's come from Dawn and Precision Planting and others has really allowed us to do some amazing things that we couldn't before in cover crops. And we, on the conventional side, we do a lot of things with upfront planter nutrition. From a conventional standpoint, you can always do that with organic nutritionals too, to kind of overcome that nutrient cycling change that we're inducing by no-till and by cover crop. We're changing that soil biology and nutrient cycling speed without the tillage. But talk to us a little bit, since you wrote the book on it, literally, organic no-till. Those two words just don't seem like they should be in the same sentence. But like you said, there's real opportunities today with technology to make organic no-till work. And I visited with one of your staff members on our farm about we're looking at making that transition to organic no-till in an HEL context. It's pretty much required. So dive in a little bit on organic no-till and kind of how that came about and how successful that is for farmers that are adopting it today.
Yeah, we deliberately, you just said those two words don't seem to go together, but we deliberately put them together to attract people's attention. We wanted to attract the attention of organic farmers, but we also wanted to attract the attention of conventional farmers as well. Part of our goal is to reduce tillage on organic farms and reduce herbicides on conventional farms. And I think we've accomplished those goals. If you talk to conventional farmers across the country, they will almost all say, well, we have to use herbicides. We're conservation farmers. We do not want to till the soil. If you don't till the soil, we got to manage weeds. And so that means you got to use herbicides. If you talk to organic farmers, they say, we can't use herbicides. We still have to manage weeds. So we're going to till the soil. And to me, there had to be a third way. And maybe there's a fourth or a fifth, I don't know. But to me, there at least had to be a third way that says, I want to reduce tillage and I want to eliminate or reduce herbicides. In both camps, there's got to be a way for it to help us manage our soils so that we don't have excessive weed pressure. How do we do that? And that's why we're focusing on this. And I think that's why, quite frankly, why the technology has grown in acceptance. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, nobody even heard of it. And now I would say that those of your listeners that are farmers, most farmers have heard of the technology. They may like it or not like it. They may have tried it or not tried it, or they know somebody who tried it and didn't like it, or tried it and did like it. But most people have, when you've mentioned roller crimper, they go, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. So it's getting into people's lexicon and into their minds. And it's kind of fun because I've been able to travel around the world talking about the work that I do here at Rodale. And I can remember I was in Germany giving a talk, and somebody said, it works in the United States, but it'll never work in Germany. And then some farmer in the back of the room said, well, I went to Rodale Institute, saw what they were doing, brought that technology back, in my head, and we made the plans available. So the plans for our roller, if somebody wants to build one, are available on our website for free. You can just go ahead and build one. He said, I built one and I do it. And so everybody suddenly turned around and stopped looking at me, and rightly so, and looked up the lecture hall to the farmer and said, oh, tell us what you're doing and how are you doing it? So a lot of people say, well, it won't work here. I hear that in the sometimes in the West, people say, oh, it's too dry to plant cover crops here. And then someone inevitably will be in the room and put up their hand and they'll say, it's too dry not to plant cover crops. Planting cover crops helps me manage water. Yes, I have to buy water in the form of irrigation, but I can stockpile water in cover crops. Anybody who's ever seen a standing field of forage peas or field peas, or Austrian winter peas, peas are nothing but 3 feet of water standing above the ground. If you grab them and squeeze them, you can literally squeeze the juice in the water right out of it. So you've captured all that water, you've held it, and now you can put it back and release it into the soil when you terminate it with a roller crimper. It doesn't translocate into the atmosphere. It actually gets absorbed by the soil. So we can manage moisture with cover crops. So I was a guest to speak in Norway. They said it's too cold in Norway. I said, oh, well, they're doing it in Manitoba, Canada. It's pretty cold up there too. And they said, oh, really? And so you put those farmers in connection with the farmers in Norway. Now Norwegian farmers are using a roller crimper. I was in Argentina on a farm down there, a fairly large farm of 34,000 acres. And when I got there, to talk about roller crimper with farmers there. Prior to me getting there, they had days and days of rain. I drove for 6 hours in a pickup truck and I didn't see any dry land. Everything was underwater. There was probably 6 inches to a foot of water standing on every field that we passed. When we got to the farm with the rye cover crop, my host said, I brought boots along for you because I know you're going to want to get out and see the soil. And, unfortunately, we've just had this torrential flooding. When we got out of the truck at that farm, I walked out with my regular leather work boots. We walked onto the field and we planted soybeans that day. He said, my neighbors won't plant for days, maybe weeks, until this dries out and so the water runs off. He said, I wonder where all that water went, because it was a 400-acre field. He said it rained on this field like everybody else's. We took a shovel and we dug down 2 feet, as much as we could dig quickly with a hand spade. And it was moist the whole way down, and it was roots. And we put the roller on the front of his tractor and the planter on the back, and we planted 400 acres of soybeans that day, where everybody else was paddling a canoe through their field, literally paddling canoes in their fields.
Well, when you change one thing, you change everything. And cover crops change water cycling. And we work with a lot of people in the Western United States, and I hear that, well, we're wasting water with cover crops. And I've done some work with researchers, and Jeff Mitchell has a big test plot out there that he has historical data for a long period of time. I asked him just to go back through the neutron probes, and essentially their data points were he used 2.4 inches to grow the cover crop.
Yep.
And he saved 2.1 inches within season to in evaporation. So you're almost a 1-for-1, depending on your management. You can't let it turn into a jungle. You can't, you got to plant the right crops, those kind of things. But that can be done because you reduce all the surface evaporation. And like you said, when you do get a rain, it goes into the soil instead of off the soil. So
yeah, you capture every drop. I've worked with Jeff Mitchell, and Jeff's used some of our roller technology. I don't think he's doing it at the moment, but I think in talking to some of the farmers in the West, particularly if you're buying water, you may change when you buy water and how you're buying water. Yes, you buy water for your cover crop, but then your cash crop takes less. So, when you're budgeting your water, you got to think about things differently. And that's true.
And then the other thing is too, especially for those situations, water availability, you just spend 2 inches to get it growing, but then you can grow it on winter rains, which typically, they have in California, but then you're banking that water, if you will, like you said, for the peak season use, which is going to be cut in half here in the next year or so. So it's
and even working with some rice growers, that are flooding their fields. What they're finding is with duckweed, they're having to flood the fields deeper than they used to because the duckweed is actually mutating and is getting taller. So they said, we actually need more acre feet of water to grow rice. But if we drain those paddies and use cover crops and improve the weed management with cover crops, we don't need as much water to flood the field. Now, I understand some of those water rights are ancient and they can get as much water as they want, but why waste it if we don't have to flood those fields 2 inches deeper than you had to 20 years ago just to manage the same weed? I mean, how deep are you going to flood it? So they're constantly building up their dikes to get that water level up, and the weeds are going to mutate around that. They have nothing else to do, and that's what they're going to do. So in 20 years, are you going to have to flood them 2 more inches as water gets more scarce? Where I think stepping back and saying, how do we manage the soil to improve our weed management strategy literally at the ground level so that we don't need that? So I think there's a lot of opportunities that the roller does for us that it doesn't solve everybody's problem. And I don't want to infer that it does. But it is another tool that farmers can put in their toolbox that even on organic farms, we have, and some of our conventional farmers, particularly with something like sweet corn that you plant in succession, farmers will start out tilling the soil because it's cold and the cover crop isn't mature. And then as their planting season moves along, they turn into roller crimpers. It's not we can wear multiple hats. We can walk and chew gum at the same time as farmers. We don't have to say, well, I'm a strict no-tiller and I will never till the soil. There might be a time when a little tillage makes sense. We don't want to be strict tillers and say, I just till the soil. I don't care about soil health. I mean, that's ridiculous. So I've never met a farmer and I've been blessed and able to travel all over the world. Never met a farmer that got up in the morning and said, my goal is to make people sick and destroy the health of the soil. That's not what they do. And so if we can give them the tools and the technology and the knowledge to improve the health of the soil and get a quality crop to market at a reasonable cost, we're going to keep doing it.
And I think part of it's how, as farmers, we identify ourselves. Sometimes we've gotten to where we identify ourselves as by the crop that we grow. I'm a corn farmer, I'm a wheat farmer, I'm a tomato farmer, that kind of thing. And no, we're farmers. And I think, the complexity increases in planning and thinking through. It's not if you transition to organic no-till, you're not going to be a corn bean, conventional farmer. That don't work. You have to introduce other crops. You need to look at grazing animals. You need to extend those rotations in order to grow those crops. And I think one of the challenges to overcome is conventional farming is, I don't want to offend anybody by saying it this way, but it's easy. Okay. If you have a problem, there's a jug for that, or you kind of do the same thing over and over. You create these recipes for, large farmers that do 25,000 acres this way. We're going to go run the vertical till machine. We're going to plant, and we got this herbicide program. And that's what we do everywhere. Where I think when you're looking at organic no-till, it requires a lot more planning, thinking, boots on the ground, and adapting to the context of that individual field much more. What have you found great ways to help guys to, where is the pain and convenience and I think there's a knowledge gap. If farmers really knew, because we're being told that everything we're doing is sustainable and great by the chem companies, right? So, but at the same time, there's a pain to change because we don't know, it's uncomfortable, but I don't think there's a pain of the knowledge of what we're doing maybe isn't as great as what we're being told it is. How do you change that mindset is what I'm rambling on about here, Jeff. How do you get enough to where the pain of what we're doing is greater than the pain of making a change?
Yeah, well, you brought up a whole bunch of things there, especially when you were saying that farmers identify themselves as a particular crop grower. And I would suggest that every one of us that farms should start thinking of ourselves as soil microbe farmers. We're all livestock farmers, and the microbial life in the soil is what we should be focusing on. And what tools can we implement, and what systems and what rotations can we implement on our farms that are going to improve that microbial life in the soil? Because that's where the carbon currency gets exchanged. That's where the soil crop interface takes place. It's all with that microbial life. So that's what connects us together, whether we're growing tomatoes or corn or soybeans or pomegranates. We are all soil managers and managing for microbial life. And if we can think about that, then it sort of changes the structure of what we're focusing on. And you mentioned the word recipe, and I think that's what's made chemical intensive agriculture so rapidly adopted across the planet. It's not that anybody who's taken a chemistry course at a university or a college will attest to the fact that chemistry is not easy, but what it is predictable. If I take two chemicals and I mix them together here at my desk where I'm sitting, and you mix them together at your desk, and a farmer mixes them together in his farm office or kitchen table, you're going to get a reaction. I'm going to get the same reaction you get. I'm going to get the same reaction today and tomorrow. I get it in Brazil. I get it anywhere. That predictability and that ease of creating a recipe is what farmers have grown to like. On the other hand, biology is a legitimate science. You can go to any university and get a degree in biology, but it's a very messy science. You eat pepperoni pizza today, you feel great. You eat it tomorrow, you get heartburn. Why? That's biology. I don't know. What I did today works great. When I do it tomorrow, it didn't work great. The weather pattern's different vectors. Biology is a messy science. But it's within that messiness that we're able to improve the biodiversity of the soil, to improve that microbial life. And we believe, and our data proves it, and our research, that we can, if we manage it well, increase the predictability across weather patterns. So it reduces it. I know it's sacrilege when I say it reduces your need for crop insurance, but it does. The system becomes much more predictable in its messiness and its unpredictability. It becomes predictable. So you can think about that, but there's a lot of thought that has to go into it. And I would never suggest, I don't want to offend anybody by saying that conventional farmers don't think, because they do. But a lot of that thought process that went into the system was done off-site by the chemical company. They've got world-class chemists that work on those things day in and day out. And so there's a lot of work goes into it. But then once it gets to the farm, it's relatively straightforward. You get a sheet of paper with the mixing rates on it, and you put it in your tanks, and you go out and you spray it. And if it doesn't work, as long as you did everything according to the book, you call crop insurance, and they come out, and the adjuster helps you out of your fix. In organic systems and regenerative organic systems, it's a little bit different. And there is, I don't want to say there's pain, because it's not really painful. Many of the farmers that I speak with, and I would say most, have said that farming actually becomes interesting again. It's exciting. I'm learning new things. Yes, if you're, I think that conventional agriculture has allowed some poor managers to stay in business. And I think that's unfortunate. I think that there are a lot of bright, exciting young farmers that are coming into the ag community that want to try new things and do different things and be really thought provocative, not just step in line, get on with the recipe and do what the recipe tells them to do. And then take what you get at the end. They want to be more involved in the decision-making process, and using cover crops, diversifying your crop rotation allows you to do that. You mentioned bringing animals on board. The more complex you make the system, the more stable it gets. I don't want to eat the same thing all day, every day. My health would go down. Even if I just ate organic carrots, if all you did was sit here and ate organic carrots, I would become unhealthy. We need diversity in our lives. We need diversity in the soil. We need diversity in our activities. As farmers, I got a friend here that farms 3,000 acres of conventional no-till corn every year. And he's just a few years older than me, went to high school with my sister. I know him real well. And we joke all the time because I'll say, Dan, I don't know how you get up in the morning. I mean, you're going to do this year the same thing you did 20 years ago. I don't get it. And we joke about that. He said, yeah, what you do is just too messy. And I can farm so much faster with what I do. It's like, yeah, but my goal isn't to do it faster, it's to do it better. And it's to improve the health of the soil and bring a product to the market that the marketplace rewards me for. And so we both make a living, farming. We just do it differently and get along well.
One of the things you've talked about a little bit, Jeff, is regenerative organic and organic systems. And, through our conversation here, you've differentiated between those two. And yeah. I want to dive into that a little bit. And you may know Tom Willey from Madera, California. He was a pioneer in that area in the 70s in organic, before organic was even a label, or even maybe had the word for it. And I really think at that time, the spirit of organic really was regenerative. That word wasn't out there either. We kind of started as regenerative organic, and this is my opinion. I feel over time it kind of devolved into a list of, the USDA list of organically approved inputs. So it became conventional farming, but organic inputs, and they kind of missed the holistic nature of organic. And I guess what I see is the regenerative organic movement that's underfoot, that you're certainly leading the charge on, or part of the group that's leading the charge on, is really bringing us back to where we were. What's old is new again, kind of the spirit of the holistic management part of it. Talk to us about the differences in that you see, regenerative organic versus organic. What is that all about? Where are you headed, and why is this important?
Well, we all know there's power in words. G.I. Rodale, the founder of the Rodale Institute, was the first person to put the word organic in front of agriculture and created the modern organic agricultural movement that's found in the United States. And he did that back in 1942, as he was looking for a way to think about and discuss a production system that didn't rely heavily on external inputs. And he was not a farmer. He was a businessman, made his money in electrical switchgear businesses, a whole different thing. And then got involved in publishing because he thought, well, if I'm trying this idea, maybe some other people would like this idea. And the organic movement caught hold in some places and bits and pieces. I would say that the counterculture of the 50s and 60s really embraced this whole idea of organic agriculture. And you're right, it had this connotation of regenerative and organic all in one space, but that word regenerative wasn't used in the context of that conversation. But by the time we got to the late 1970s, there were folks who were sounding sort of the early warning bell of climate change and what was happening with our climate. Said, wait a minute, we're putting too much carbon into the atmosphere. They were talking about that back in the late 70s, early 80s. And Robert Rodale, J.R. Rodale's son, was an early proponent of this conversation around climate change. He was a little frustrated with the word sustainable and sustainability. He felt that that was a weak word. And I've got a friend, I've told this story many times, maybe your listeners, if they've heard me talk, they may have heard me say this. I've got a friend who's a journalist, Greg Bowman, who asked me one time, he said, if somebody asked you how your relationship was with your significant other and you said sustainable, yeah, you're smiling. Everybody chuckles when you say that. Would people be happy or sad for you? So it's a relatively weak word. And unfortunately, the word sustainable got picked up by marketers in food products and fiber products, and everything is sustainably produced to the point where the word sustainable means everything and it means nothing at the same time. It's like new, improved, and light. There's no standard for it.
But it's not. I mean, sustainable, if you really looked at the word, wouldn't that say that you can keep doing what you're doing now to infinity?
Yes. But it's saying you can do what you can do now to infinity with a huge influx of imported inputs.
Yeah, but I still don't agree that we could keep tilling and putting out chemistries and everything we're doing today for 1,000 years. No way.
No, I think most people don't believe that. So it's not really sustainable. So what we said is
the beginning of the greenwashing revolution, right?
Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, we don't want to sustain what we have. We want to improve it.
Correct.
I don't want to just sustain my life or my farm at home. I want it to improve. And so Robert Rodale was fishing around for a word, and he came up with the word regenerative. We want to regenerate our soil. If we can regenerate the health of our soil, we can regenerate farms. If we can regenerate a farm, we regenerate the spirit of a farmer. If we can regenerate a spirit of a farm, we can regenerate whole communities. Everything can get better if we focus on the soil. And that's what Robert Rodale was talking about with regeneration. And so jump forward, 30, 40 years, and we're seeing those people who were marketing the word sustainable looking for another word. New and improved, you can only do that so many times, and then they go, it seems like the same old stuff. And so they're looking for another word, and I said, how about regenerative? Let's use regenerative. And so we saw people here at Rodale, we looked around, and we could see people starting to use the word regenerative and linking it to the status quo. And so they're just taking the word sustainable, throwing it away, putting the word regenerative there and going, ta-da, we are regenerative. We're already regenerative. And it's like, no, you're not. You're doing the same thing you were doing yesterday. You're not doing anything to improve the health of your soil. And so we stepped up, again, as I mentioned, with some leading partners and said, we want to create a standard around the word regenerative and link it to the word organic, because we don't, that's just our philosophy. We don't believe that you can truly be regenerative if you're not already organic or having organic production systems in place. You can do those, you can transition simultaneously. It's not one and then the other, so you can do this simultaneously. But it's a little bit like saying, I want to be an athlete, I want to go to the Olympics, but I'm not going to give up smoking 2 packs a day. Well, you can say you're an athlete, but I can say I'm an athlete. I'm not, and anybody that would see me would know that I'm not. That's not, and if you're smoking and eating poorly, it doesn't work. So we're saying you can't treat the soil with chemistry and still say you're trying to regenerate the health of it, nor can you continuously till the soil and say that you're regenerative. And so we added a whole bunch of other features to this, to the organic standard that the USDA has. And you're right, the standard has, I don't know if it's degenerated or degraded into a system of lists of what you can and can't do. And that's unfortunate, but that's what happens when the USDA placed the thing under ag marketing. There's only certain lexicons, the language that they have and regulations. And of course, then as the industry matures and we have a community of consumers that want to support that in the marketplace, by paying a higher price for that. And we always say they're not paying a premium. It's just that conventional food is already discounted because you're not paying the true cost of that food. So when you talk about sustainable systems, you really have to reinvigorate those cost figures with externalized costs, which are tremendous. In order to keep our conventional food system sustainable, we've externalized all the costs because we already talked about making farming easy. Well, we've made it fast and cheap. So if you want easy, fast, and cheap, you're going to have pollution, contamination, and externalized costs. It's the only way to make food cheap is to externalize the cost. So subsidized crop insurance
cost associated with it too. I mean, that's a tremendous cost associated with our current food system.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to look at that. Where in the organic system, we tend to internalize all the costs, and then people pay the true cost of that food production at the point of purchase. But the marketplace is supporting that, and we see farmers wanting to move in that direction. But those consumers that come to the marketplace typically come with a suite of values, not just one value. So if you're picking up two products in your hand, and one is organic, and the other one is fair trade or has social justice issue components around it, now I have to make a choice. Which one of those issues, when I'm buying these tomato pastes, is most important to me? We have farmers. One farmer, I think, said it best when I was talking with him. He said, "I feel like a Boy Scout with a sash full of merit badges because I'm organic, I'm halal, I'm fair trade, I'm animal welfare approved. I got all I got
packaging to fit all the labels."
Yeah, that's what he said. I'm running out of space on my meat. He was harvesting meat and butchering. He said, I don't have room to put all my labels on this thing. And to carry the Boy Scout theme, and I was a terrible Boy Scout. Anybody of your listeners that's a Scouter, they know what I'm talking about when I say they told me to leave when I was a Weeblo. I was like, hey, he's a troublemaker, get him out. But when you're a Boy Scout and you get a certain, and I don't even know what it is, but you get a certain number of merit badges and you work hard enough, you get to be an Eagle Scout. Once you're an Eagle Scout, that's the badge you wear. And, here at Rodale Institute, when we advertise for positions and somebody applies for a position, they may be 40 years old and they'll still list on their resume that they're an Eagle Scout because it carries a certain respect across the globe for the amount of work that it took and the dedication to get that badge. And so the farmer said to me, can't I just have one badge that says everything that's important to you as a consumer, I do it. I take care of the water. I take care of the area. I improve the health of the soil. I take care of my animals. I take care of my employees. All of that is important to you. It's important to me. And I do all of that. And so we created the Regenerative Organic Certification Standard that is based on the organic principles, but then adds to it three additional pillars. One, dealing with soil health. So we have a soil health pillar. We have an animal welfare pillar because we know that's important to not just to farmers, but to their customers as well. And then we have a social justice pillar because nobody wants to buy a certified organic product that they know was produced or harvested by people who somewhere in that supply chain were mistreated.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's excellent. And I like that being the gold standard. It's definitely a step in the right direction. I think long term, and how you use the suite of values that the consumer has, I think long term, I almost envision every attribute, being able to be recorded using technology and uploaded into a blockchain type format. So there's complete transparency of everything that happened with this particular food item. And then going through an interview questionnaire of what's important to a consumer, and it will change over time based on their health status, their financial status. So as a consumer, I want to spend this many dollars, yet, social justice is important to me, or soil quality or ecosystem services, whatever. They evaluate that. And then a decision engine of some type can automatically query that blockchain, and it's delivered to your door XYZ product that you'd never even known before, but it meets all that criteria that you're looking at. Right. I think if we could get to that kind of a point, that would be awesome. In the meantime, regenerative organic is a great step in the right direction. That vision of true, transparent, connected farm to table, it'll take some time to get there, but I think modern technology that's evolving will get us there someday.
Yeah, because so much of our product comes in processed format. Yes, some of us just eat an apple or a carrot or a single
all the
ingredient
ingredients.
product. But many of us will eat processed product. I mentioned tomato sauce or salsa, and the ingredients come from all over the place. And you want to have some sort of assurance that even if the ingredients came from pick any kind of Turkey or Argentina or Brazil or Japan or Australia, you want to know that those ingredients were produced in a manner that meet your standard as a consumer. And so that's why we created this international standard that addresses that. And it was really helped initially pushed by the fiber industry, not just the food industry, because people who are buying organic cotton want to know that cotton wasn't harvested by teenage girls that were forbidden to go to school because they had to work at picking cotton in the field in Turkey. And there's no place in the organic world to have that conversation around social justice or farm worker fairness.
And that is an interesting thing. Half of the world's cotton is still picked by hand, and a majority, if not nearly all of it, organic, is handpicked. So just because of desiccation and those kind of things. So
right.
Yeah, it's wild. We got a couple of minutes left here, Jeff. Anything else that you'd like to bring up, or something that I missed that we should have discussed here today while we were together?
Well, I would mention that the Institute here, while we are a science-based organization and education, we are also now in the consultancy world, because we recognize that farmers face multiple barriers to adoptions of new technology. And one of those barriers is access to knowledge. We also know that many farmers get their information either from land-grant universities or from input suppliers, and they
probably don't have a vested interest.
Sometimes they have a very vested interest. Other times they'll hire consultants who will come out to their farm and do soil testing or plant tissue analysis or field scouting, and those are all valuable tools. But we wanted to create a consultancy that will help walk a farmer through the process to go from wherever they are to a certified organic or certified regenerative organic farm operation. And there's a lot of unknowns for many conventional farmers in that journey. And so we created a consultancy that will walk them hand in glove. And some farms that we're working with now, and we just started this activity probably less than 30 months ago. And I think we already have well over 300 farms that we're working with, and tens of thousands of acres already in transition. And we always start with about 10% of a farm. That's our suggestion, is start with 10% of your farm. So it represents hundreds of thousands of acres. It's been exciting because it's allowed us to become partners with some unlikely, maybe on the surface unlikely candidates, but Cargill, for example, is now one of our primary supporters in our consultancy as they're looking to transition tens of thousands of acres from conventional to organic to supply their supply chain. And they came to us and said, we could use some help to get these farmers onboarded. And so they now, depending on where you are and how you sign up with Cargill, Cargill pays for the consultancy. So it's free to the farmer. And the farmer just has to agree to a multi-year contract with Cargill to ship their organic grain once it's certified. It's a 3-year process to get your field certified organic. That's under, and regenerative organic, that's under USDA regulation. And farmers want to know that at the end of that 3-year transition period, there is a market for their product. And so by working with Cargill, we have long-term storage, logistics. That's what they do. And so you have to work with some bigger players if you want to move bigger acreages. And there are the demand in the poultry industry in particular for domestic corn, bean product, beans especially, is just astronomical. They can't get enough. It's holding back the industry growth as more and more consumers want organic poultry.
Yeah, and in the Midwest type context, that having a market for those rotational crops is a key component to make it work, or in the organic no-till.
And that's why working with Cargill it's been successful because they buy the entire rotation.
Right.
They want the beans. They need the beans. And so they're going to lean on those producers to say, get beans in there as much as you can, but we're going to buy every crop that you produce on your farm and we'll find a home for it. And they're large enough to do that. So it's exciting that that this kind of consultancy relationship with farmers has opened the door to new players that we can participate with to make positive change in the ag industry.
Well, that's excellent. I do want to give a little shout out to one of your team members. Leah was out at our farm and a couple times, and she's been a great resource so far, very thoughtful on the long-term planning things out. She's given me a little pushback on the no-till thing, so I got to change my paradigm a little bit and be okay with maybe a little tillage as needed. But like you said, what is the least worst thing to do? Exactly. Is it and honestly, in an annual cropping situation anyway, fungal colonies don't develop that great. So, occasional intermittent tillage probably isn't the end of the world, but here I am, one of those guys identifying as a no-till farmer. So sure. I've got paradigms I got to overcome too. But no, I think that's a great approach. You've got the great science, you've got the practical experience making it work on the piloting on the farms around the country. Now it's a matter of how do we help the farmer? You got to have the pull through, a place for with Cargill and other projects that you'll have in the future. But, having a team that can come together and help a farmer think through the planning stage, I think that's critical to making it work. So.
Well, and the other partner that we're bringing on board now, of course, is the lending institutions. Many farmers go to the field with borrowed money, borrowed capital, and that's just the way it works. And they need to feel comfortable with that transition process as well, because their money is at risk, or they feel it might be at risk. So having consultancies and long-term contracts in hand really helps them feel more comfortable with the process and then feel more inclined to do some lending.
Yeah, because today's comfort level is driven by crop insurance.
That's right.
And when we go through transition organic, that crop insurance completely changes. So
it does.
Well, very, very good. I appreciate your time today, Jeff. And I celebrate all the fantastic things that you and your entire team are doing there. I think it's a look to the future of agriculture, and it's science-based, and I think it has an potential to really impact positively, not only on farmers, but the communities that we live in and the people that eat our food. They're going to eat high quality, nutrient dense food.
Well, yeah, I think that's really a great way to end it, is that it's all about the people who consume the food. We want them to be healthy. We know that if you just think about it from a logical perspective, if what we're using is ag chemicals to produce food and then pharmaceuticals to try to keep people healthy on the back end, that's just not a real strong future.
That's the old saying that got you coming and going.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. And we need to get the medical community on board, and we're working on that here at the Institute. And we're finding a lot of support in the functional medicine side, where people say diet is really important. We're discovering some really interesting things. I know we're running out of time, or probably have run out of time, but I would challenge your listeners to use their internet browser and look up the word ergothionine. Many people never heard of ergothionine, but ergothionine is an amino acid that is formed in the soil by soil funguses. Certain mushrooms do it as well. But what we're finding is that there is about 50% less ergothionine in our diets today than there was 50 years ago. And ergothionine apparently helps our bodies fight off some neurological diseases like attention deficit disorder, autism, and Alzheimer's. And what do we see rising in our country? Those levels, some of it's detection, we understand that, but some of it is just more and more people struggling with these neurological disorders. And here is a case where the soil is enabling our bodies to mitigate that. And we're inadvertently, with side effects from all of our ag practices, killing off the very funguses. Nobody intentionally does that, but it happens, and those funguses are actually trying to help keep us alive. So that's why I say the microbiology of the soil is really the future of agriculture, and the more we can get involved with that, the more exciting it becomes.
Yeah, unintended consequences rear their ugly head over a long period of time. They just, you don't see. We're really good at detecting the acute symptoms, or toxic symptoms. The chronic type things are just very tough to diagnose, and it happens on a regular basis when we think we're smarter than the created system, and it comes back to get us. So.
Well, they do. They build up even in our bodies over time, and sometimes people don't recognize what happened to in your 60s or 70s. You go, oh, it's too late to change it, but it's an accumulated effect. And so we're beginning on the medical side and on the soil science side to understand those connections more. And that's a powerful story. So I think the future is incredibly bright for agriculture. It's incredibly bright for the planet and for human health. Yeah, I know some folks think we're all going to get in a rocket ship and go to another planet.
Screw that one up too. No.
Well, yeah, I would. I mean, I don't know much about your family, but I'm pretty sure the Moyers are far too poor to be selected to go on those. They're not going to take 9 billion people with them, and so we're going to be left behind here to deal with what we got, and we're going to try to improve it. And that's, I think, all farmers want to do that, improve the health of their soil.
And a final note is, if you are one of the listeners that heard the ergothionine and you're Googling it to see if you can get a supplement, you've missed the context of our talk today. So the whole key is that when we create a robust living system, we are going to get these auxiliary benefits and secondary metabolites, amino acids that are only produced within the soil microbiome. And we're going to get that into our gut and brain and connection and get things repaired and restored. So it's exciting.
Yeah, we have not figured out how to make it in a test tube.
We're just in the tip of the iceberg of learning how we used to do things. There was a good reason for doing it that way. So
yeah, so
we just took a 100-year detour.
Well, and we have to bring, we don't want to leave modern science behind when we move, when we recapture some of those important attributes of the past. We want to modernize them with robotics, with ag engineering, with all of the great strides that have been made in equipment manufacturing. And
that was really the whole purpose of why we started AgEmerge, was to bring these concepts of ag technology and apply them to regenerative agriculture instead of applying them to a few more bushels in conventional. So I think it's
we got a new corn
way to meld the technology with the ways of how we did.
We got a new corn planter here at Rodale Institute last year, and it's got some Dawn equipment on it, and we're using it with our roto crimper. And when we bought it, our farm manager said to me, "How do you set this thing up?" I said, "I don't know. There must be a computer on it somewhere." And we were looking all over for the computer, and we called the manufacturer, and he said, "This is your computer." He said, "It's your telephone. You set everything with your smartphone." So once we downloaded the app, we changed the planter from the driver's seat with cell phone technology. Of course, we're going to use that in organic. That's just smart business, and it's the best way to establish, what farmers who do grow corn want to see, that picket fence corn where every corn plant is precision planted. That's what we're going to do. So we're not moving away from that. We're embracing that technology. We're just doing it in a way that doesn't lose sight of the fact that the soil is here to keep us healthy, and we need to keep the soil healthy to do that.
Well said. Appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you for your time today, and keep the mission going strong, and look to visit again in the future.
We hope to do that. I appreciate the time with you and with your listeners, and wish you all a great growing season.
Excellent. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Well, how fun was that? I think if we've learned one thing from having all these great guests on, it's the concept of keep learning, keep collaborating, and as we like to say here, keep doing the next right thing. And as always, if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing to help growers implement soil health practices, check out our website at asn.farm, and there you can click on links to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. There's a lot of great things happening and always something to learn. Thanks for listening.